If you can speak, you can influence. And if you can influence, you can change lives. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kumar and I welcome you to the Mastermind Summit. Can we have a round of applause? Today, you're going to listen some wonderful speeches from our Mastermind group speakers. So I welcome you all to this Mastermind Summit. And this Mastermind the ideation has been done by our past President of Professional Speakers Association of India, Nirja Singh. And this has been sponsored by cando.ind.in, a social entity that skills people with disabilities. So if you're based in India, check out their website, cando.ind.in, and we encourage you to employ at least one person with disability. Thank you so much, cando.ind, for sponsoring this summit. And are you all ready for our first speaker? Are you all ready? Yes. I can't hear you. Are you all ready for the first speaker? Fantastic. All right. Change leadership, risk-taking, decision-making, team building, trust building, motivation. Wading through difficult conversations and living comfortably, being uncomfortable, the Colonel has it all in his leadership quiver. Learn the military way of leadership from Colonel Shyam, who is a Kargil veteran, paratrooper, pathfinder, and a possibilitarian, working with leaders to carve sustained transformation by effective storytelling, battle bullets to boardroom bouquets, developing resilience and warrior mindset to achieve impactful 2x levels in ideation, inspirational and decision-making skills, 5 times levels in ramping up your productivity, to lead teams and organizations for turnarounds in this VUCA world. So ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and help me welcome with roaring round of applause, Simha, the Colonel Vijay Simha.
There was a young queen facing a formidable enemy. The difference between the two forces being Shipra River. The young queen had lost her husband, her son, and her father-in-law who mentored her or made her the queen of her kingdom. The king opposite the queen was waiting for this opportunity when she was absolutely at her low. He wanted to conquer that kingdom. The queen, though under severe pressure, took this opportunity, approached the Peshwa of Marathas, asked him about the attack which he is facing, asked him for the help. The Peshwa replied that he will not be able to help the queen to face the enemy, however, gives a free hand to her to launch an attack on the attacking enemy. The queen launches her troops, faces the enemy, deploys her troops along the Shipra River on the other side, where the enemy was all out gunning with 5,000 troops amassed against the queen. In the night, the queen coolly sends a messenger across the river to the enemy king. The message said, "Dear king, if you win this war, there will not be an iota of applause to you because you are powerful. If you lose this war, there will be insults heaped on you because you have lost to a lady." The enemy king understood the message, saw through it, understood his chances because he has to cross a formidable obstacle and then launch an attack. The losses he felt were more than his victory chances. So he coolly replies back saying, "I just came here to look you up because you have suffered the loss of your husband, your son, and your father-in-law," and coolly offers truce and walks back. The queen wins the war without wielding a single weapon. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Colonel Shyam. I am an army veteran, possibilitarian, pathfinder, and a Kargil veteran. Why am I saying the story to you? Change management, change leadership is what is on display when Ahalyabai Holkar faced a formidable enemy in King Raghoba. She won the war without wielding a single weapon. This was a change in history of fighting wars. Now, how did this happen? She had her goal clear. She had to sustain her kingdom, her family. She had to earn the trust of her forces, her people in the fort. She had to tide over this problem so that her kingdom sustains, lives forever. She had to come up with this problem. The goal was clear, to tide over the problem. She was excellent in planning. So she put to use all the strategies. She put to use her excellent communication skill. She knew that pen was mightier than sword. She utilized her intellect and penned such wonderful verses which actually demoralized the enemy. 3. She thought out of box. None till then have thought to win over an enemy by just communicating with him. She, being a lady, played that card of communication wherein she said, if you win, nobody talks. And if you lose, you will be insulted, and this will be etched in history. Change leadership. A leader has to foresee, predict, institute change, stand by it, and then progress on that path to sustain it so that he makes a difference. It was in 2002, one of the team of Indian Armed Forces was moving through a jungle. There was an information which we got. This is regarding one terrorist called Abu Bilal. He was a person who revived the presence of Lashkar-e-Toiba in the valley. He was the person who was called the great recruiter for Lashkar-e-Toiba from the valley. He used to recruit Kashmiri youth, transport them to POK into the terrorist camps, get them trained there, guide them back to the valley, and inflict insults and injuries in the valley. So the information was given to the team. The team was guided by a young captain. This gentleman planned. There was a lot of briefing gone in. The rehearsals were carried out. The troops were trained. They walked into a place which is closer to Mender. It's a high reach, fully filled with thick undergrowth and jungles. The troop deployed, identified the house in which the terrorists were holed. There were 2 leaders who were guiding the 3 terrorists, that is the new recruits, and they were about to cross into Pakistan. Mender is bang on the border of India-Pakistan. You cross Balnoi Pass, you are into POK. So everything was set. This young captain was about to shoot his first round. That is the time there was an intercept received on the radio which this young captain was carrying. It says Bilal was a distance away from the actual house in which the rest of the terrorists were holed. There was a communication between Bilal and these 3 young guys where Bilal was saying that you please wait there for another 2 hours, I'll come pick you up from that place. So the young captain understood. There is no point in raiding the house. If you raid the house, what happens? You get young guys who are anywhere between 16 to 20, yet to be trained, maybe raw, still having a weapon, that's a different story. But then the purpose of getting Bilal will be lost. We have been hunting for Bilal for the past 2 years, and the captain decides at the spur of the moment. This was around 12 o'clock in the night. He calls up his troop, assembles, we call it as commando base, assembles at a place, discusses the entire thing. 90% of the troop says no. Let us go for a kill. The troop commander tells them, let us not indulge in shootout. I will convince these 3 young lads to surrender. Let us get them back. These guys know the presence of Bilal. With their help, let us go get Bilal. After a parley of approximately 1 to 1.5 hours, he could convince 70% of the troop. 30% were left behind to lay a base in case of these 70% guys get into trouble. The troop commander takes the lead. He says, "You sit here." He walks towards the house barehanded without a weapon. First time in the history of special forces. He walks barehanded, announces that he is coming towards the house, and tells these three youngsters in the house that we know that you three are innocent. Come out, surrender. I am without a weapon. You can shoot me down, but you will not be alive. You come back, you will be united with your parents, your family, and we will treat you with due respect. 7 hours of negotiation happens. Morning 9 o'clock, the first guy emerges out with a human shield. A person who was living in that house was put in front of these guys. He comes out with a weapon pointing at that Maulvi of that house. Subsequently, after an hour or so, all three surrender. Now, why am I saying this story to you? We in special forces are trained to kill. One man, one bullet. We are not supposed to negotiate surrenders. We are the last line of defense. We are launched to make the impact. We are launched to create that impact by eliminating the enemy whom we are facing or who is facing us. We are called the ghosts. We only appear once. And if a person sees us, that will be his last. He should not see us next time. But then the captain took a different turn. He started a new trend from where whatever we hear now, wham, winning hearts and minds of people has started. He is Captain Mohit, the youngster who is no more, known for such bravery. He decided at the spur of the moment, the larger good. As a change leader, you should look at a broader picture. He knew that this surrender will lead to a tremendous impact on terrorism in Valley. It so happened after this surrender, there were numerous other surrenders. A lot of people who surrendered. That was a trigger. He walked the first step. He thought out of box, practically. He was absolutely sure of a step. He knew this can be sustained. War cannot win world, but negotiations can. In war, once you finish the war, you sit on a table to negotiate or parley what has to be bargained. So he understood that. He had a complete sense of the incident and the future. He looked through it. He planned the continuity. He was a leader who walked the talk. He took the lead. He walked alone. He had earned the trust of his men because he walked. He walked his talk. He made the difference. And the difference we still see, wherein a lot of misguided youth come back and surrender to us. As a change leader, if you want to make a difference, think through it, develop your knowledge, understand the situation as fastly as possible, adapt to the changes, be flexible. This becomes the harbinger for a leader to win the trust of his men. This is how you do it. The same example, when put in the international template in 1976 June, the unthinkable was planned by Israel. When their plane got hijacked along with 84 Jews in them which landed in NTB, and there was no point, it was absolutely a no point of return. It was given up. All countries, including US, Britain, NATO, everybody gave up on the release and safe return of those Jews. But Israel never gave up. Small, tiny country surrounded by 7 strong enemy nations. The leadership of the country decided to go diplomatic. They wanted to negotiate. They tried to pull down or pull to their side the great nations like US and Britain who refused flatly. They thought differently. They walked up to Egypt, who was their enemy. They requested the president of Egypt to negotiate. Egypt president couldn't negotiate as the terrorists were not ready to negotiate with him. He requested Libya. The Libyan president then palmed off the same duty to the president of Uganda. The moment the mantles kept passing, Israel never wasted a single moment of time. The forces of Israel decided to go military. The option they wanted to explore, they wanted to travel miles together unnoticed, crossing borders of so many nations, undetected, land there, go red, kill the terrorists, and bring back their hostages, which was practically written off by the government of Israel. They were skeptical. They were not ready to take the risk. But then, Yohanan Netanyahu, the lieutenant colonel who led the operation raid on NTP, which is called Operation Thunderbolt, convinced the government. They just had 7 days. They went into this operation with 7 days of rehearsals. They never slept. They worked hard. Each man in the force understood what he is supposed to do, how to carry out a dual task. They boarded C-130s and moved towards Uganda. They landed in Kenya. This was called a diversion. From Kenya, they moved to Libya. Via Libya, they moved towards Uganda. Once they landed in Uganda, it was a rush affair. The forces knew exactly who was standing. They went all red. In fact, they planned to such a level that they carried a Mercedes-Benz car, which was exactly same, a replica of the car of Idi Amin, the president of Uganda. They landed in it. They landed in the airport. They destroyed the Air Force of Uganda. They rushed into the buildings of airport, destroyed all terrorists, released the hostages, and lost 1 person and 4 injured. The 1 person is the leader of the team, Yohanan Netanyahu, who was the erstwhile Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu's brother. Now, how did he do it? What is so great about it? When entire world said it can't be done, this man said it can be done. The first thing is confidence in himself. A change leader must have confidence in himself. He has to be completely aware of himself. He is fully aware of his knowledge. He believed and had faith in his troops. He knew it can be possible. It can be made possible. He worked for it. He knew if we practice, it can be achieved. He did it. He knew he had to move bold. He was courageous. And this courage was rubbed into his troops because he led. He told his troops, if somebody has to lay down his life, it will be him. And he did so. A true mark of leader who made a change in the entire tactics of world armies. This is where everybody has picked leaves. After the failed raid of US, that is the Eagle Claw in Iran, US with subsequent practices has killed Osama bin Laden, which we all know, in a raid which is across the nations. A change leader has to create waves. A change leader has to understand the future. A change leader has to be completely aware of himself. A change leader has to be confident. A change leader has to be trustworthy. Yohanan Netanyahu was a living example for that. We all know Alexander the Great, but none paid attention to Philip II, who was the father of Alexander. He was the person who made difference in building and creating a great Macedonian army. The army which was built by Philip II has won the world. It is not Alexander alone who won the world for Babylon. No. It was Philip's army which stood by Alexander and won the war. How did he do it? Philip faced Spartans, Thebans, Illyrians, and so many other tribesmen. So how did Philip do it? Philip created something called Sarissa. a spear which was 24 feet long, which had spikes at both ends. It was difficult to carry sarissa. 24 feet spear was unable to be balanced by any trained soldier. So what did he do? He came up with a different idea. He said he cut the spear into two. He made a conduit in between where it can be fixed. So the soldier used to carry two spears, two parts of the spear at his back. And the moment the hostilities were to break, they used to fix the spear and launch. Now how does this work? The phalanx, which is called the Saracens, these are the guys who were the second string. They were the guys facing the enemy. The first string, which was just ahead of them, is called infantry. The moment the hostilities broke, the infantry used to peel off. They used to take a diversion towards right or left, depending upon the tactics which they want to employ. The Saracens, the army of 9,000 Macedonians, used to point the sarissa one after the other in 5 rows consecutively towards the enemy. Because of the reach and the spike which is there behind the spear, they used to dig it down inside the ground, and the forward end of the spear used to be pointing toward the cavalrymen who were coming on horses. Nobody could break the wall of Macedonian Saracens. This is where the strong army started developing. This is called the Saracen phalanx, which won Alexander the war against the great and the mighty Darius. This was the force which created way for Alexander to move towards Hindu Kush. So how did this happen? Philip understood that in case if he has to win over the tribesmen or the rest of the world, he need to come up with a different tactics. So he started inventing, improvising constantly, and came up with this idea called sarissa. So as a change leader, you are supposed to be improvising, you are supposed to be innovating, you are supposed to be constantly thinking, you are supposed to be a constant leader, you are supposed to be looking forward and making your troops or the teams to train so that they can take on the future challenges. Phillips ensured that the Greece army will remain invincible for the years to come. He was the guy who was the reason for Alexander to become or to be called the Great. So be a leader, be a change leader to institute such change and carve a niche for yourself. Before I conclude, let me just pose this question. What is your sarissa to become a change leader? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.